You are hanging from a rope over a black hole in the jungle. The air is wet. The light from the surface is already fading. Below you, the ground opens into a maze of stone corridors and chambers. People call this place Cueva de los Tallos, the cave of the oilbirds. For locals, it is a dangerous cave system. For outsiders, it became something else. A rumored front door to a golden library that should not exist. The story sounds simple. Somewhere deep inside these tunnels, there is a hidden room. The walls are too smooth to be natural. The corners look like they were cut. Lining those walls are shelves of metal plates covered in an unknown script. Some people say they record the history of a lost civilization. Others swear they are proof of non-human visitors. Official reports say no one has ever found such a room. Unofficial rumors say the best pieces were taken out long ago and scattered. Here is the part nobody wants you thinking about. A legend this precise should live or die on one thing: the plates. And they are always somewhere else. In this video, you will see how one cave in Ecuador turned into a legend about a metallic library. You will meet three main suspects behind that legend. The first is a man whose claims never came with proof. The second is a mix of misread rocks and missing context. The third is a pattern of real artifacts that burn, get sold, or vanish into vaults. At the end, we will come back to one idea. The real secret might not be hidden underground at all. It might be hidden in how we treat evidence. On a map, Cueva de los Tallos sits in the eastern foothills of the Andes in Ecuador. The entrance is a vertical shaft that drops straight into the dark. Inside, oilbirds nest on ledges and navigate with sound instead of sight. Beyond that shaft lie long corridors and large chambers. In some places, the rock forms flat plains and sharp edges. Geologists can explain these shapes with fractures and erosion. People chasing a mystery see something else. They see hallways, doors, architecture. Now ask yourself this. If you already want a hidden library to be real, how long before normal rock starts looking like proof? The modern legend starts in the 1960s with a man named Janos Moricz. According to his own account, he gained the trust of Shuar guides. They led him into a part of the cave that most outsiders never see. There, he said, he walked into a huge chamber full of metal plates and strange objects. The plates looked like books laid flat. The surface was engraved with rows of symbols that did not match any known script in the region. Beside them were statues and artifacts that did not fit standard local styles. Moricz filed a statement with the Ecuadorian authorities. He claimed he had discovered something of great cultural importance. He did not give exact directions. He did not bring a single plate to be tested. He offered a story and a promise. The plates, he said, were safe where they were. Here is the part nobody should be comfortable with. The man who found a metallic library never let one plate touch independent hands. That is our first suspect. A man who talked like a discoverer but never put a single object on the table where anyone else could test it. In the 1970s, a popular author picked up his claims and poured gasoline on them. Erich von Däniken retold the story in a book that reached readers all over the world. In his version, the metallic library became evidence of visits from advanced beings. He described tunnels that looked designed, chambers that felt built, not carved by water, shelves of metal books recording knowledge from an age before history. It was dramatic. It sold very well. It also blurred the line between what Moricz had actually said and what the theory needed. That is not research. That is cashing in on a story you cannot back up and hoping nobody notices the missing evidence. Archaeologists and cavers pushed back. They pointed out that no independent expedition had ever seen anything like the library described in those books. They examined the cave and saw natural formations. They called the metallic library unverified at best and a hoax at worst. In academic circles, that judgment has not changed. The official position is simple. There is no proven golden library in Cueva de los Tallos. If that was the end, the story would be easy. One claimant, one sensational writer, no evidence, case closed. But it does not end there. Because while the library itself never shows up, The artifacts around the story do something strange. They appear in photos. They sit in church rooms and private collections. Then they disappear. In 1976, a large expedition descended into Taos. It included scientists, cavers, soldiers, and even Neil Armstrong. The first man on the moon went down into this cave. The team spent days underground. They mapped the system. They collected data on animals and plants. They documented burial sites from the second millennium before our era. They saw squared edges and flat plains in some passages. They did not find shelves of metal books, but they did not find any room that matched the famous description. So either the Golden Library never existed, or someone stripped it before the cameras went in. Pick the version that bothers you more. For scientists, that settled the physical question. The cave is natural. It has a long history of ritual and practical use. It is impressive, but not otherworldly. For believers, the answer was different. They said the team had searched the wrong branch, or that someone had emptied the library before the expedition ever arrived. This is where the story stops being about one cave and starts being about how people treat gaps. One side calls a gap nothing. The other side calls the same gap proof. Here is where our second suspect appears. It is not a person. It is a combination of misinterpretation and missing context. The same rock face can look like a fracture pattern to one viewer and a cut wall to another. The same absence of artifacts can look like proof of nothing to a geologist and proof of a cover-up to a conspiracy hunter. But there is still a third strand. It does not begin inside the cave. It begins in a city, in a church courtyard, with a priest named Father Crespi. Over decades in Cuenca, Crespi gathered a huge collection of artifacts. Local people brought him metal plates, carvings, figurines, and tools. Some were said to come from the region around Taos. Others clearly came from different places and cultures across Ecuador. Photographs show a chaotic scene. Walls crowded with metal sheets, rows of strange figures. Objects leaned on top of each other with no labels. Some items look crude and recent. Others look like standard pre-Columbian pieces. A few look odd enough to raise questions. Plates with grid-like patterns. Symbols that do not match obvious known scripts. Motifs that seem out of place. Researchers who studied Crespi's collection after the fact came to a cautious conclusion. It was a mixture. There were genuine artifacts from different cultures and time periods. There were forgeries made to impress or profit from the priest. There might have been a small number of pieces that deserved serious study but never got it. For those, the documentation is thin. Often, all we have is a single photograph and a description someone wrote down later. In 1962, a fire hit the church where Crespi kept his collection. Some objects were destroyed. Others were moved in a hurry. Over the following years, most of the collection vanished from public view. Some pieces were sold. Some were transferred to the Central Bank of Ecuador. Some, according to persistent rumor, were shipped quietly to Rome and absorbed into church holdings. If you ask for a full inventory today, you run into gaps, vague answers, or silence. Convenient, is it not? The one man with a room full of awkward artifacts just happens to lose them in a fire and a series of quiet transfers. That is our third suspect. Not an alien civilization, not a hidden library, a familiar pattern. Real objects are gathered without proper records. A fire breaks out. Institutions step in. When the dust settles, no one can say exactly what was lost, what was sold, and what was locked away. Conspiracy-minded writers draw a straight line. Taos Cave, Shuar Guides, Moricz and his metal plates, von Däniken and his aliens, Crespi and his strange collection, banks and Vatican archives. In that narrative, every missing artifact is proof of a deliberate cover-up. The Golden Library existed, but powerful institutions stripped it and hid the best parts. Archaeologists and many historians see a different picture. They see no verified golden books. They see a natural cave. They see a priest with a mixed collection that was never properly cataloged. They see the tragic but common story of heritage damaged by fire, sale, and neglect. For them, the library is not a hidden reality. It is the result of stacking weak claims on top of each other. This is the part where most people pick a side and stop thinking. But that is the lazy way out. The strange thing is that both sides are reacting to something real, not a perfect underground archive, something less glamorous and much more widespread. South America's past has been looted, burned, and scattered over centuries. That is not a theory. That is the record. Look beyond Ecuador for a moment. In Colombia, Tairona stones and gold work were pulled from sites for more than a century. Objects were dug up, smuggled, sold to collectors, and sent overseas. Today, key artifacts are missing or trapped in legal disputes. For some, all that remains is an old drawing and a note that says current location unknown. Ciudad Perdida, the so-called lost city in the Sierra Nevada, was first hit by looters. Graves were emptied before formal archaeology arrived. By the time specialists got there, the cleanest evidence was already gone. At this point, you cannot call it an accident. It is a habit. The past gets dug up, stripped for parts, and whatever does not fit the clean story quietly disappears. Set Tayos next to that pattern, and it looks less unique. A cave with rumored artifacts, a collection that was never properly inventoried, a fire, sales, transfers to banks and institutions, gaps in the record. In that context, the absence of proof does not feel neutral. It feels like exactly what you would expect after decades of mishandling and quiet removal. Now ask yourself this. If a handful of Crespi's strangest plates had been genuine, how easy would it be for them to disappear into a private vault or a deep archive where nobody can test them? They would not need an alien library to vanish. They would just need one sale, one shipment, one decision by a curator or a banker. When you look at all three suspects together, you do not get a clean answer. You get something murkier. A first wave of bold claims without evidence. A second wave of sensational books that confuse natural features with constructed ones. A third wave of real artifacts scattered and lost in ways that make those bold claims impossible to confirm or completely disprove. From a distance, that feels like one big mystery. Up close, it looks like something more ordinary and more dangerous. A system where the physical pieces of the past are fragile, valuable, and always at risk of ending up where the public never sees them again. If they own the objects, they own the story. If they own the story, they own what you think is real history. And that is the part that actually touches your life. It is not about whether there is a perfect metallic library under the Ecuadorian jungle. It is about who controls the evidence that shapes our timeline. When a small group of people, whether they are collectors, banks, museums, or churches, decides what to keep, what to display, and what to bury in storage, they also decide which stories feel real. The Golden Library is a great image. Rows of metal books glowing in the dark. It pulls clicks and sells stories. But the real danger might be quieter. If something like that ever did exist, we have already seen how easy it is to lose it. Fires can erase it. Greed can break it into pieces and sell it off. Institutions can put it in boxes and lock the door. The world goes back to normal and the official story rolls on. So the real mystery is not, does a metallic library exist in Cueva de los Tayos? The real mystery is, how many times have we already destroyed or buried the kind of evidence that could have forced us to rewrite history, and who benefits from the fact that we cannot prove what we lost? If you want more myths and conspiracies pulled apart without sanding off the sharp edges, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, so you do not miss the next deep dive. And tell me in the comments which part of this story feels more dangerous to you. The idea of a secret alien library under the jungle, or the idea that losing real artifacts is so normal we barely notice when history quietly changes shape.